Welcome. Thanks everyone for joining us this evening for this solar and net energy metering workshop. It's presented by the City of Concord and MCE. My name is Coleman Frick. I'm an associate planner with the Community and Economic Development Department, and we have a presentation this evening by Rebecca Boyles of MCE, an account manager. But first, I'm just going to provide a little bit of background from the city's perspective. The city made the determination to join MCE, which is a local non-for-profit electricity provider that has 50% and 100% renewable service options for electricity. The council passed an ordinance and resolution last summer so that the city would be part of MCE. And the reason why is for a number of reasons, but one, to provides more local control. Every jurisdiction in MCE's service area appoints a representative to MCE's board of directors. Also, MCE has a proven track record of being cost competitive with investor-owned utilities. Another reason is that MCE gives the opportunity for residents and business owners, any account holders, to make a choice between PG&E or MCE and one of its products. So by state law, because this is a common question we had at the last meeting on March 22nd, all accounts are automatically enrolled in MCE unless they opt out for PG&E, and that change is happening this month based on meter read date. And MCE can give a little bit more detail on some of that information. But this meeting is designed to be a forum to answer some of the more complex questions that are specific to account holders that have solar on their property. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Rebecca. Thanks.
Sure, thanks, Coleman. Can everyone hear me all right? Thanks, how's that? All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thanks, Coleman, for that great introduction. My name's Rebecca. I'm an account manager at MCE. I've had the pleasure now of speaking to you all twice, which is great. I was here on March 22nd, and I definitely see some familiar faces in the crowd, so I'm glad that you're taking the time to come learn more about your energy choices. So as we mentioned, we are going to be the new electric generation service provider here in Concord. And here's our current service area. So the green is the area that's currently being enrolled in April. So meter read date, Coleman mentioned that. So you all will be transitioned to MCE whenever your meter is read, and there's several cycles throughout the month, so it could be any month in the year. Thanks. Any month or any day within the month. So whenever your bill normally comes is when it will transition over. So as you can see here, MCE is the electric generation service provider in Napa and Marin counties and the towns and cities within. And we've been providing service in Contra Costa County for a few years now, so we're not new, but many of you may not have heard of us. But here's our service territory. So just to get down to the basics of what we do, we work in partnership with PG&E to provide your electric generation services. So there's two different components to the electricity. There's the transmission and delivery, and then there's the generation or the creation of the energy. So MCE only handles the generation or the creation of the energy, and PG&E is still going to handle the wires. If there's an outage, you still call PG&E. You'll still see their trucks in your neighborhood, and they also still do the billing. So the only thing that really shifts is that you would see an MCE section for the generation portion of your bill. And so as Coleman also mentioned, we want to be able to give local control. So you're all here now, you can provide feedback here. This is our board, and our board is made up of elected officials from every community in which we serve. So we're here to listen to feedback. Your elected officials are here to listen to feedback, and it's a way to give more local control over energy supply. All right, so here's a little bit more in the basics. So how many of you folks have solar currently? Fantastic. I think that's 99%, if not 100. That's great. So I'm going to try to keep it as brief as possible with the presentation because I know you all probably have some specific questions. We have a lot of staff in the room that we can, look at your bill. We do have a couple of calculators that if you're lucky enough to have brought your bill with you, we can take a look at it. But I'll try to keep the basics in the presentation as short as possible to allow for as many questions as possible because I imagine you all are very curious. So. All right, so one of the main differences between MCE and PG&E is that, as you all probably know, you get an annual true-up from PG&E, and you have a monthly minimum bill charge, which is usually $10, $11 per month, and so that will continue. You'll still receive a true-up as an MCE customer, and you'll still be subject to that minimum bill charge, and that will still accrue in an escrow account for your account. But MCE does charge and credit monthly, so that'll be a little bit of a change for some of you. The biggest difference is that if you're not used to paying monthly, it may seem like a little much initially, but then at the end of the year, if you're one of the majority of solar customers that ends up owing a little bit at the end of the year at your true-up will be far less since you've already been paying your generation charges monthly. So that's a big difference. And then we try to incentivize local solar as much as possible. We pay full retail rates plus a penny per kilowatt hour for surplus generation. So I'll get into it in a little bit. Yes, sir.
What is the full retail rate?
So that's whatever electric rate schedule you're on currently. If you're on E1, which is the majority of customers, actually, excuse me, it was the majority of customers. Now pretty much everyone has to be on time of use if they get a new solar system. But E1 is the flat rate, and that would be 6.8 cents per kilowatt hour in MCE's rates. But that's a rate that does not change based on the time of day. So time of use rates like ETOU, ETOU A and B, those change. So it becomes more expensive, at the peak, in the peak middle of the day, and then less expensive when demand is less on the grid. So whatever rate you're already on, it's your full retail rate plus a penny per kilowatt hour. And then our credits roll over continuously up to a $5,000 limit, which most folks don't hit, so usually not an issue. And then one of the other important pieces about transitioning over, and this is one that we talk to solar folks all the time, is that immediately preceding the transition to MCE service, PG&E needs to balance your account. So they're going to do a true-up regardless of where you are in your true-up cycle. So you'll receive a true-up. So if that true-up is going to, if you haven't already delayed your enrollment, and that true-up may present some adverse effects for you, just let us know. Just come talk to us, and we'll see what we can do about your account. And then, our rate schedules mirror PG&E, so I went into that a little bit, but your rate schedule won't change. You'll remain on the same rate schedule. We mirror their rates. We have slightly cheaper rates in general, but we do mirror those PG&E rates, so your rate won't change. Oh, and any discounts as well. So if you're currently on a discount program, that won't change either. That does not change at all from the change to MCE service. You don't have to reapply unless you do so every year. It's the same process, but your discounts will still apply. Yes, sir.
I'm getting more than a cent. I'm getting paid. They're giving me more per kilowatt. What you're giving, and you're asking now. Is MCE? Are they going to knock out the tier rates? Instead of having tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, you're going to flatline it? Is that what you're saying?
No, so tiering remains unaffected because all tiering is going to be on the PG&E side of your bill, so none of that will change. But actually, so I'll get into this a little bit. So PG&E will credit you at your full retail rate up until you have surplus generation. And then what happens at that point, so once a year, they'll initiate the true-up. If you have surplus generation at that point, say you have, it looks like maybe you're accruing a few $100s in cash value credits. What they do is they actually X that amount out, and they go to a per kilowatt hour accounting system. So you only receive that net surplus compensation. They'll only write you a check if the total kilowatt hours that you produced is greater than what you used. And so it's a little bit of a different calculation. And then they use the wholesale rate for that. So if you did generate 100 kilowatt hours more, then they would compute that at 3.4 cents. It's between 3 and 4 cents per kilowatt hour versus MCEs can be anywhere from 7 to 35 cents for that kilowatt hour. So it's a little bit different.
All right, well, that talks about it.
Sure, no problem. So this is just some of the differences, which I've already gone into some of them. We give premium rates. The excess credits are zeroed up in PG&E. We don't zero them up. Yeah, and then the other piece of it is if, for those times when you might be pulling some energy from the grid when your system isn't generating, or if you're not generating, your full usage, you'll be getting 55% renewable versus PG&E's 33 for about the same cost. And that's the other thing too, is that our rates are a little bit cheaper, between 2 and 5% on average. Yes, ma'am.
Was it 55% or 50%?
So right now it's 55%, but we haven't changed everything, so our marketing materials. But it's a minimum of 50% is, I guess, the better way to put it. But last year we were 55. So. All right, so this is more applicable to non-solar accounts. This is just to show you, that our rates are a little bit cheaper, about the same. For 70% of the time that we've been in operation, we've been cheaper or about the same price as PG&E. So we try to maintain that rate stability for everyone. We don't want you to worry about your rates going up too much. And actually, the last 2 times we've changed rates, MCE's lowered our rates. So pretty good deal. All right, and so this is more rates specifically applying to solar. So as many of you may be aware, I mentioned earlier, so under NEM 2.0, Net Energy Metering 2.0, which came into effect a little over a year ago, about a year and a half ago, customers were required to go onto a time of use rate. But those time of use rates, the peak periods have been moving. The basic bottom line is that it's been a little bit less cost effective for many solar folks. And unfortunately, that is the trend that we see going forward. But I just wanted to let you know that, those changes are happening. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about it, but it is good to be aware of what's happening. And then E7, I don't know, was anyone here lucky enough to be on E7? Yeah, it was a great rate. E7 was a rate that was actually really great for solar customers because it paid out at a very high rate at peak, right when the solar is generating quite a bit. So if you were lucky enough to be on E7, you probably came out ahead, even if your usage was greater than your generation. But unfortunately, that plan has been eliminated. A lot of customers went into E6, which is still a really good rate, but not anywhere near E7, unfortunately. About that, yes. Yeah, in March. Yeah, and in the back, ma'am.
You said that everybody's on TOU?
So under NEM 2.0, customers were required to be on a time of use rate. However, I have seen exceptions to that rule, and that's the other thing about solar that I'm sure we'll discover when we're talking to you about your very own bills. There is an exception to prove every rule, but in general, when PG&E enters into a new interconnection agreement right now, they'll put you on a time of use rate.
So if we got solar 4 years ago, are we on TOU now?
I couldn't tell you. You might be, but you might not be. Yeah.
It'd be on our
It would be on your bill, correct, yeah. All right.
Another question.
Yes, sir.
Let's say I have 50%. My neighbor on the right has 100%. And PG&E is provided for my neighbor on the left. We're all getting the same juice. What is the essence of the difference?
Sure, no, that's a great question. I actually love that question. So yes, the electrons are going to flow to the path of least resistance. So if you're generating solar on your home, that solar energy is going to go directly to your home or to your neighbor's home first. But what matters in energy is that we count what goes onto the grid. So I think a really good analogy that I've heard is the bathtub, right? So we don't actually count we count what's going out in terms of quantity, but you can't tell whether the electrons that you're getting in your home are 50, 100% renewable. It doesn't work that way. But what does work is when any kind of a megawatt of renewable energy is created, they create what's called a renewable energy certificate. So that's generated to ensure that we're not double counting, that people aren't committing fraud in terms of creating renewable energy. So that is tied to that unit of energy that then goes onto the grid. So that's what they measure in renewable energy and actually conventional energy as well, to make sure that we know what's going onto the grid. So while it may seem that, from your precise location, you're not necessarily getting maybe the exact percentage that we put up here. What matters is what's going onto the grid, because we very carefully calculate how that works. And actually, there's some pretty complicated energy accounting that goes on after the fact to figure out what went onto the grid, what came off of the grid, that kind of thing. So it does matter, because if the more customers that are part of MCE, they're creating a bigger demand for renewable energy, and we're putting more renewable energy on the grid. So, make sense? Okay.
Thanks for all the great questions so far. We really want this to be something that people can watch on TV as well as Facebook Live. So I think we're going to hold the rest of the questions till after the presentation's over so everyone can hear them. But yeah, thanks for the great questions so far.
Thanks for keeping me on track, Coleman. Yeah, so here's a little bit of what I was getting into a little bit earlier with, just our cash out rate. So MCE, we don't do an annual true-up, but we do have a cash out process that happens annually right about now. So around in May, with the conclusion of the April billing cycle, we'll look at customers' accounts. If customers have more than $100 of credits, then we will offer them a check, or we can offer them that those credits will roll over to offset their future usage. And this is how it's calculated. So, MCE pays retail plus a penny, but for that surplus generation, basically when you get above zero with your usage and generation, it's about 3.4 cents per kilowatt hour. So, yeah. And that's our very own Ben in the back. We're really proud of incentivizing local solar, and especially for school districts and cities, that kind of thing. And so because our payout rate, our cash out rate is so high, we're able to help out customers that have systems on their roofs. All right, thank you very much.
Great, thanks a lot, Rebecca. So if anyone has questions now, I'm going to come around with a mic, and that way everyone can hear the questions on mic. Thanks. Yes.
One of the things that you just mentioned there was the 3.4 cents per kilowatt hour on the refund. I didn't, because earlier we were talking about 6.8 plus 1. So where does the 3.4 come in?
Sure. So that 3.4 is what, can everybody hear me? 3.4 is what PG&E pays out. The 6.8, so our E1 rate, the flat rate, that's 6.8 cents per kilowatt hour. So if you were on E1, we would pay you 7.8 cents per kilowatt hour.
Fantastic. That sounds great. One of the other things that I wanted to do, just to answer that other gentleman's question a little bit better, essentially what you're doing is when you contract with MCE, MCE buys the power, the clean power, and puts it on the line, versus if you're contracted with, say, PG&E, they do whatever it is that they do. But the idea of it is the power that you're doing business with MCE, so then the power that they are supplying on the line that you are buying is the 50 or 55% clean power.
Yeah, definitely.
That's just a different way of putting it.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate that, because it is kind of a complicated thing to explain. That's why I love the bathtub analogy. So yeah, we're trying to keep the tub cleaner, I guess, is a good way. But thank you. Thank you for restating that.
The one last thing that I wanted to ask about specifically to my install is that I'm going to be putting in a very large ground mount system. I'm an electrician actually by trade, and I've installed solars and everything else. And my plan is to put in something actually much larger than what I really need. And I can do so on a cost basis much lower than what anybody else could do. I just want to be sure that it'll pencil out. So that 7.8 cents is a pretty solid number for me to work with then.
So
and I will get that for my overages. So in other words, anything over, I will get that 7.8.
So if you're on the E1 rate, then yes. But more than likely, if you haven't set up your system, you haven't interconnected yet, they're going to put you on a time of use rate. So it could actually be more than that at peak. It just depends on your rate. But yes, yeah, it's always full retail plus a penny per kilowatt hour.
Okay, that's great. That answers my question. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay. And we're going to go over there next.
You give us a billing every month, is that correct?
For generation, yes.
In other words, PG&E gives us once a year if you have solar.
Correct, plus that
All right,
$10 to
so
$11 monthly
If we have zero
charge.
amount of money we owe you, you still send us a bill?
You'll see it on your PG&E bill. You'll see it as a credit if you don't owe us money.
Okay, and you send a self-stamped envelope?
No, it's actually on your PG&E bill, so that's why we like to say the greatest change you'll never notice.
Oh, it's still on your PG&E bill, okay.
Yeah, they just separate out the charges. So the transmission and delivery, the PG&E side, is the first few pages, and then when you get to page 3 or 4, you'll see the MCE generation charges broken out, or credits.
So we still send just one check?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, the other question I had was when I put my solar in, I was only allowed to put so many panels in. Can we increase our panels with your system?
I wish I could tell you that. Unfortunately, PG&E is very reluctant to, approve systems that are much larger than a customer's usage. So we have no control over that, and that's PG&E. And in general, the gentleman, I know he spoke about making a system larger, which is great if you're able to do that, but most of the time, PG&E will not allow that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, I have an E6 plan with PG&E, and so I know that I generate power in the middle of the day, and they pay me a lot for that, and then I use it at night, and I buy it back for like half of what I am being paid for the daytime power. So that's going to continue with MCE.
Yes, so you'll still accrue credits on the PG&E side of your bill. They'll just be different. They'll be a little bit less on the PG&E side of bill, and then you'll accrue credits on the generation side for MCE if you're an MCE customer.
I don't understand that.
Okay, so when you get your bill, if you were an MCE customer and you're probably very used to seeing the different monthly charges for the solar bill, so you'll still receive that. But what PG&E will do is they separate out the transmission and delivery charges and credits from the generation charges and credits. And so you'll still see all the same graphs and charts that you do on the PG&E side of your bill, but then you'll have the MCE generation component on page 3 or 4.
Just to use some numbers, it's something like over 30 cents for daytime peak power, but a big chunk of that is still PG&E. You're only going to be a small portion of that. Is that correct?
Correct, but MCE rates, yes, yeah. But
Okay. But it's still more in the daytime than at nighttime?
Yes, if you're on a rate that credits higher during the daytime or pays higher, yes, that stays the same.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Oh, did you have a question?
I actually have 2 questions. The first is on the sample bill that you have. There's a charge that says power charge indifference adjustment. Is that going to be on every single bill?
Yes, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up because we get a lot of questions about what we call the PCIA. So that is what's known as an exit fee, and it's paid by all community choice aggregation. So MCE is called a community choice aggregation program. So all CCAs within the state of California, our customers are paying that PCIA on every monthly bill. And that's it's a charge that the California Public Utilities Commission allows PG&E to charge customers for contracts that they entered into on that customer's behalf before they left to become MCE customers, or Sonoma Clean Power. Sonoma Clean Power is a sister agency in Sonoma, part of their program, any other CCA in the state. So that will continue. That will be on every monthly bill.
But wouldn't that eventually zero out if we're an MCE customer? Because we're not, PG&E shouldn't be contracting for energy that we're getting from you.
Yes, so theoretically it will sunset at some point, though we don't know when that is. There is currently a proceeding at the California Public Utilities Commission that's looking into the transparency and how it's calculated, when it will sunset, that kind of thing. And we've been pretty involved with that because we're very curious, obviously. Our customers pay a lot into that fund. But yes, it's supposed to be sunsetting at some point. We just don't know when yet.
Okay.
And then to add to that, I'm Michael Cass, Principal Planner in charge of Long Range and Sustainability Policy for the City of Concord. In regards to the PCIA, when MCE does their analysis in terms of what rates are actually imposed on electrical account holders, it is inclusive of that PCIA fee. And so when they speak to the fact that for residential accounts being 2 to 5% less expensive than PG&E, it is inclusive of that PCIA fee.
Okay, thank you. My other quick question is where you have the sample residential cost comparisons, and you have PG&E additional fees, about $15 and change, but not on PG&E. Is that $15 the fee that we pay for the privilege of having PG&E as our supplier?
It's the PCIA and a franchise fee, so they're extra fees added to MCE customers' bills, correct?
So that's not the $10 or so that we get charged?
No, so that will still continue, that $10 to $11 monthly minimum bill charge on the PG&E side, that will still continue.
Okay, thank you.
So we can opt out?
Correct.
At any time or just the first month?
You can opt out at any time.
So we can go along on this plan for a month or two and see what our bills really look like and then decide if we want to opt out.
Absolutely. There is a window if you opt out after receiving MCE service for 60 days. So in most people's cases here, it's June. There is a one-time $5 administrative fee, and PG&E does not allow you to return to MCE for a year, and that's it. But yes, you may opt out at any time.
Okay, thank you.
After the 60 days, correct, yes.
I have another question. We have PG&E and we have electric and gas. Now, how's that, when we get our bill, we get our gas and electric together and they deduct everything as one unit. Now, will this be separate or how's this going to work if we go to MCI?
Sure. So gas remains unaffected. That doesn't get affected at all. Generally, your charges and credits will go into one check. So if you end up owing for either PG&E or MCE or both together, that will just be one check to PG&E. But they are broken out in the different components between the transmission delivery and the generation. But in terms of you paying your actual bill, one bill.
One bill.
I've got two questions. One is when the panels for solar are cleaned from all the pollen and whatever's on it that cuts down the effectiveness, the production of the power, what kind of program is there, or if any, that helps keep those clean? Do you have a program for that?
We don't, and I don't even know where to direct you. Ben, do you have a resource that you could? Yeah. Yeah, my apologies. We don't work on the solar aspect at all, really.
The other part, well, right now I'm getting a PG&E bill, a big one, and I'm getting a Sunrun bill every month, the two. I mean, at the end of the year, November, I got a $10,000 bill from PG&E. And there's a reason, I think, but I went to them and they said, get me all your bills from PG&E for the last 2 years. So I called them up and they're sending me the back records of everything, and I'm going to turn it over to Sunrun because I don't think I'm getting the power. But is there will we still get a bill from you and my solar provider, which is Sunrun? Am I still going to get two bills with your program?
Yes, it wouldn't, changing to MCE service wouldn't affect the Sunrun bill at all.
Well, I think my question is to Sunrun then, is why am I getting a bill from them as well as PG&E?
Exactly,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
And they might be able to help you figure out what's going on with your production and usage, too.
Thank you.
I have a solar panel system that is underperforming really for our needs. I'm getting about $1,900 to $1,000 true-up. And I'm wondering if I added more panels, would I have to change my rate plan from my originating plan?
That's a good question. I think it depends on your original interconnection agreement, whether or not you can add on the panels. But that said, that would be a better question for your solar installer. Hopefully they'd be able to answer that.
What if they're no longer in town?
That might be problematic. Yeah, if you have your original interconnection agreement, you could check it out and see if it allows for additions.
I do have it.
Yeah.
Okay, my second question was the Tesla battery. I'm wondering if that would affect this at all.
The Powerwall?
No, well, the interface with MCI and PG&E.
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I can give you my card afterward, and there's a lot going on with storage that, yeah, we do have a program, but we haven't quite launched it too. That revolves around battery storage.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I am having a very low PG&E bill, but I don't understand a thing that they're writing about. A penny here, 2 pennies there, and all that. And I don't know the internal charges between you and PG&E. These are just pennies, but they're very confusing to a senior citizen trying to comprehend what's going on. I pay monthly the same amount all year long because I couldn't deal with a high bill, low bill, and whatever. So I don't have solar either. So what will be the benefits from somebody to change from one to the other, from PG&E to yours? It will not change very much at all if you don't have solar, if you don't have alternatives and all that. Plus, like I said, I get the smiley faces. I love that. Then I know I'm doing good. You know, I don't know. I just like simple. When I
Sure.
see all these penny figures and all that, it drives me absolutely mad.
Absolutely.
You know.
I mean, I talk to energy professionals all the time that cannot read their bills. It's very confusing. So as a non-solar customer, we're 2 to 5% cheaper on average. We can do cost comparisons and look at your actual usage and see how you would do. So follow up with us later and feel free to get a card from one of us and we can look at your bills and see what we can see. The other advantage is there's more renewable energy, and then the local control aspect is that you do have more of a say in the type of energy that your community is receiving. But are you on a balance payment plan or budget billing? Is that what you're referring to?
I have a monthly same amount of money. It's
Okay.
spread out over the whole year.
Right. So that one, if you're on the balance payment plan, also now it's known as budget billing, that program isn't supported by MCE. So you would still see it on the PG&E side of your bill. It would remain, I think they go about 4 months before they recalculate it. That would remain on the PG&E side of things, but the MCE generation component would change based on your usage every month. So, if you wanted to keep that program, we would advise you to opt out of MCE, because unfortunately we don't have a similar program. But in general, MCE is 2 to 5% cheaper, so a little bit, save you a little bit.
And the other question that I have, I'm waiting for my Tesla to come, and I just heard about that they have a special box that they will store their own energy so that you can charge your car at night. With other words, it doesn't go through the grid. And how does that work for somebody who doesn't have solar?
That's a really good question. So that would be probably the Powerwall, the battery storage that someone was talking about. Basically, it would be the same as if you were a PG&E customer. Like, none of that would necessarily be affected, other than, when you pull off the grid, you're getting more renewables, and the rate is different. We're a little bit cheaper. That's about it.
And I do want to add to the first question that you asked in regards to the balance payment plan, a slight distinction. So the balance payment plan does not apply to electrical service. It does apply to gas service. So it would only be the electrical portion that you would not be covered anymore under the balance payment plan.
And one more nuance to that. If you were an MCE customer and on the balance payment plan, 2/3 of your bill remains balanced. The gas portion, as Michael Cass just pointed out, will remain balanced, as well as the transmission and distribution cost of electricity. So 2/3 will remain balanced. Unfortunately, PG&E and MCE systems are incompatible, so the generation portion of the bill would fluctuate from month to month, but it is the portion of the bill that's the least volatile. So as Rebecca points out, we're cheaper, so hopefully we'd save you a little bit if you stayed with us, but we understand that if you wanted to keep a 100% balanced bill the same from month to month, that we'd recommend opting out to receive full balance.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm wearing a couple of hats here. One is I had solar installed last week, and I'm waiting for permission to operate. When I got this letter, I've talked to hundreds of people about this letter, probably almost as many as you have. I normally, for a living, compare PG&E to rooftop solar, and now I'm comparing to MCE.
I'm so glad you're here.
And I've read the letter several times, and the biggest problem with it is it does not look like a notice. It's a legal notice. You're announcing this change, and you don't actually say explicitly what you're doing until the top of page 3. Page 1 has pretty graphics, and it's got different size titles. It's got passive language that doesn't even mention that there's a change until the bottom half, the first page. And then page 2 is boring. It's big, thick paragraphs. There's smaller headlines. The headlines are passive again. It over and over and over, it keeps saying that you have all this time to opt out. All the people with solar in this room, half of them have already missed the boat for opting out without an immediate true-up. And that's because you have to opt out 5 days in advance, which would be the 14th of April from now. If you opt out today, it's 14th of April. So half the people in here are unable to opt out. So it's a bit late giving that information.
They can always opt out.
They can always opt out, but they will have an immediate true-up from PG&E if they owe money. If they have an anniversary date in the fall or winter with the days that are short, they've built up debits, and they're going to have to, normally you'd go through the summer and you'd build up credits and you wouldn't owe anything if you have the right size system. There are people who spoke already who have fairly large true-ups. $10,000 is a big number. I don't know if he knew that if he doesn't opt out in time, he's going to have an immediate true-up. Now, I don't think you should ever use this letter again. I have been talking to people who have solar and people who don't have solar, and almost all of them either threw it out or read it and didn't understand it. You are going to have your phone ringing off the hook. You probably already know this. I'm pretty sure that's why you had price decreases in the past. It's pretty obvious that MCE's price for 100% is higher than its price for 50% or 55%, whichever one it really is. And PG&E has a 100% option. We could pay PG&E 100%. I've never met anybody that uses that rate. So I'm pretty sure that alternative energy costs more unless you put it on your roof and you wipe out all those delivery and all those extra charges to get it from wherever the solar farm is to here. So I'm really upset with this letter. I think you are going to make a lot of people unhappy and cause a lot of problems for people with solar. And the people who don't have solar are going to be confused, and they won't know what's going on, and their bills will just go up the same way they normally do. They'll probably blame themselves for running the air conditioner. So I just would like to request you don't do it. But the key thing is there's nothing in this letter that says there's an immediate true-up for solar customers. When you go to the website, it's on there. You actually recommend that you opt out and try to opt in closer to your anniversary date. I'm sorry, my other hat besides doing solar analysis and owning solar, and thankfully with batteries so I can time shift and get a better rate, I am also a registered libertarian, and I hate it when a government organization, because that's what you are, an agency with politicians on the board, doesn't take into account the fact that everybody's needs are different and they have a right to opt in if they want to change, but I don't think you have a right to make contracts for us.
Absolutely. So I'm going to stop you. Thank you so much for your feedback. And I'm really glad to hear that you've been out there in the community talking to folks about this. I'm hoping that you help to educate a few more folks than we've been able to reach. So yes, absolutely. Congrats on your new system as well. We definitely do hear that about the letters. And unfortunately, so we've been doing enrollment since 2010. We've changed the format of the letters so many times. We've done focus groups to see, what people would actually open and read. And so now our strategy is to send the business form letter, the 3 pages. It absolutely does say opt out if your true up is going to adversely affect you. So we have the business form letters. We do the county seals, city seals. We have, for other customers that may believe that that's more like junk mail, we have some trifold flyers with a lot of pretty graphics to catch your eye. So absolutely. I mean, some people, we do hundreds of events in order to prepare communities and try to educate all those folks that we can. And actually, we've been doing a really big solar outreach push, especially with this enrollment, because so many folks in Contra Costa have solar. So we're going to miss people, absolutely. We do try to reach them as much as we can. We do advertisements, that kind of thing. And if you'd like to follow up with us on the exact critiques on the letter, we're happy to hear them. I would love to hear more in-depth feedback about what could work for you. And the other thing that I want to say that's really, really important here is if anyone is adversely affected by that true-up, come and talk to us. We will work with PG&E to make it right. The last thing we want is for solar folks to lose their credits or to get an untimely bill. So we do have ways of working with PG&E to make sure that your account is not affected in that way after the fact. So even if you get an untimely true-up and you think it's too late, it's not too late. Come to us. We'll work directly with you and with PG&E to make it right.
Hi, so I'm a contractor that installs solar, and I have a couple questions, I guess, regarding some of that. So I guess question number one is, I guess in reference to the other guy who was talking about trying to build a bigger farm, I'm pretty sure PG&E has a cap of about 15 to 20% over what you're actually billed for to be able to generate. They won't let you generate more than, design a system that generates more than 20% of what your usage is based on. So trying to load up on a larger system after the fact and put more panels on your roof isn't really going to pay back anybody because PG&E is not going to let you do it. I think along with some of the fees that we're missing out on, it sounds, we already get billed for transmission and production fees already. Basically what you're saying is it's staying on, the transmission and production fees are staying on PG&E, well, I guess not production, but the transmission delivery fees are staying on PG&E's side because we're using their grid system. And we're paying a different rate now for the MCE generation, which sounds like it's going to be a little bit higher payback. But what are some of the incentives for customers trying to, like right now we're looking at a customer who is requiring about a 7.4 kW system to be zero. He could handle about a 9.5 that PG&E will allow, but he'd obviously have to come out of pocket more money up front for that. Is that worth it to customers to put that kind of production on for that person's house? I mean, they don't care about paying their neighbors. Some people don't care about generating clean energy for their neighbor. They just want to get, not owe PG&E money anymore. Mm-hmm. So is putting a larger system on and overproducing, is it worth it in this sense and not just trying to be zero? Because I guess you're saying you roll over, the credits roll over, or PG&E's doesn't, it just zeroes out. Nobody wants to spend extra money to lose their usage. So is putting a larger system on worth it?
My understanding is the same as yours, that PG&E will not, they won't approve interconnection agreements past a certain usage threshold. So they try not to allow folks to, over-generate in that way. But if you're in a situation where you're already over-generating, then absolutely MCE is generally best for almost all those folks, just because of the way that we credit the full retail plus a penny per kilowatt hour. So versus the PG&E 2 to 3 cents. As for the interconnection agreement and is it worth it, I would have to lob that one back into your court because I know, solar folks usually try to figure out projections-wise is it worth it, and because it really does depend on usage and also the generation of the exact system. But I'm happy to work with you afterward and get you rates and more information if that's helpful for you.
Yeah, anything you have that would show why this would be a good thing or not, because right now, most people want to stay at about 100% because 120% isn't worth it to them to pay the extra money. Yeah. But if 120% is worth it and PG&E allows it, that's what now that we're looking at larger incentives for people, larger paybacks. This is the first time in a long time that people have heard possibility of checks coming back from their energy provider. When PG&E first was doing that, they cut it off really, really fast because they were losing money. So,
yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's due to the great success of solar in California, right? We're kind of a victim of that. It's no longer as financially feasible. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's very case by case basis. But I'm happy to work with you to kind of figure that out after.
Okay, thank you.
Fact.
Oh, yeah, just speaking about generation, can you talk a little bit about the generation mix that you have between wind, solar, and other types? And of the total megawatt hours that you guys deliver or supply, what are you actually generating within your organization?
Within our service area?
Well, what do you own that you're generating percentage of what you're actually then supplying?
Sure. So MCE doesn't currently own any of our assets, which, more and more the larger investor-owned utilities are kind of similar. We all operate kind of similarly. So these are our local projects within our service area. I don't have our resource mix on this PowerPoint, unfortunately, but we have a very detailed, I think it's something like 178 pages, integrated resource plan on our website, and I'm happy to give you that resource that details exactly where our power comes from, in what quantities. We have to file that every year, so that, that's all transparent, so I can definitely point you in the right direction. Alexander, I think you explained that one really well. Do you want to talk about local benefits?
Oh, local benefits, definitely. I was going to say that if you go to mcecleanenergy.org/Contra Costa, we have a lot of resources there that unfortunately we haven't included in the PowerPoint, but I think in part of your base question was what's the resource mix? I think it's currently, as of 2017, I think we have most contracts under our wind. We have 30, I think it's 36%-ish of our electricity portfolio is made up of wind, followed closely by solar energy. But we also, these are the local development projects that we've helped incentivize. And one of those, MCE Solar 1, is based in Richmond. So to your question about ownership, without diving into the details, but I think there's some developers here who would have this base knowledge. Because we're a public agency, we can't take advantage of the tax credits that incentivize some of these larger projects. So what ends up happening is we help a private financier develop the project, and then once the tax credits are consumed in 6 to 7 years, then we get to a place where MCE could possibly become the owner of such a project. But we're a couple years out until we're there. And I would, the integrated resource plan for people with really detailed questions has a breakdown of all of MCE's contracts.
Yeah. And for the 100% renewable, it's a lot easier. It's 50% solar, 50% wind, all in state California. Thanks, Alex.
I guess one other quick question on governance. The investor-owned utilities have the Public Utility Commission. How are you guys, who oversees your board and how you guys operate?
Sure. So we are regulated. We're just regulated a little bit differently. Because we're a public agency, we're governed by we're governed by our board of directors. They're all local officials. So we already have the transparency of being a public agency, and we have to adhere to all those rules. We have reporting to the California Energy Commission, to the California Public Utilities Commission, for different ways. And actually, the integrated resource plan goes into exactly what that means, what we report to which agency, that kind of thing. But we're definitely accountable to all of the same bigger organizations. It's just set up a little bit differently for us.
I was just wanting a little clarification. You said something about investor-owned utility. Is that you or PG&E?
That would be PG&E.
Okay, so you are not investor-owned. You are
Correct.
a public entity.
Correct.
And could you just give a little history how it came about?
Sure. Jamie, could I sorry to throw you into it, but Jamie's been here since before we started, so I would love to hear, if you don't mind, Jamie. This is Jamie Tuckey, our Director of Public Affairs.
Does this work? Right. Hi. Thanks, everybody, for coming. So our organization was created in 2008. That's when the public agency was formed, and we launched service in 2010. When we initiated service, we started in Marin County, and since that time, we've expanded to also serve Napa County, several communities here in Contra Costa County, and also Benicia, which is in Solano County. We were the first program of our kind in California, but there are dozens now here in the state. By the end of this year, it's looking like there'll be over 4.5 million customers in California that are served by this type of program. We were authorized by a law in California that was passed by our legislature in 2002, and it basically enables local governments to come together, procure electricity, and sell it to the residents and businesses, just as we are in their communities. I wasn't sure who asked that question, but thanks for asking that. Did you have any other follow-up questions?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm confused. I have a question about true-up.
Sure.
Our true-up with PG&E is in October, and every month when we get a bill, it shows what the new true-up is and has accumulated since last October. So this past October, with 29 panels that the company says are running at 100% efficiency, our true-up was $882. The last bill had a true-up of about $450. And this coming Wednesday, our meter will be read again, and whatever that is will be due and payable the first week of May. So I'm thinking that whatever that true-up is, I would pay to get on an April cycle. But I'm not clear when you say you don't have a true-up. What does that really mean? I don't follow.
Sure, no problem. So if if you had a true-up in October, whenever you transition to MCE service, there would be another true-up to balance those accounts. So you would still have a true-up as an MCE customer on the PG&E side of your bill, but that true-up date would reset to the April billing cycle, because they'll do it 12 months from the last time they've given you a true-up. But they have to basically clear the accounts before MCE service starts. So you would still receive that true-up. It would be about a year from whenever you started service.
Okay.
Yeah, but MCE does charge a credit for generation monthly, so you would see that just broken out on your bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's been waiting longer than I have.
Okay, so you're saying there is an annual true-up with MCE?
No, so there's an annual true-up on the PG&E side of the bill. That doesn't change. MCE does a cash out every year, so it's a little bit confusing, my apologies. But MCE does do a cash out every year, and that's for surplus generators. So if you're generating more than you use, then we would offer you a check if you had more than $100 credit in your account. But MCE charges and credits monthly, and PG&E will still do the annual, but also you'd still have that $10 to $11 charge, the minimum bill charge on the PG&E side of your bill.
Right, so what's the annual part? I mean, there's $10 to $11 a month, and once you've changed over to MCE, what's the annual part?
On so it would be the separation of the components of the electricity, so the transmission and delivery, then they would charge you or credit you annually on the PG&E side of your bill. And then MCE is going to charge you or credit you monthly on the MCE side of the bill. So if your usage is such that you end up owing at true-up, generally, you'll owe a little bit less because you will have been paying for your generation component monthly, if that makes sense. But you still would have that annual true-up on the PG&E side of your bill.
Okay, I'm still not clear on it, because I think I'm paying for the transmission part monthly now.
Some customers
There's
are.
about $10 a month we pay for the transmission part. You're saying that's going to change over to an annual fee?
No, so that $10 to $11 charge, the minimum bill charge, that would remain as an MCE customer. That's still there. And what happens with that $10 to $11 is that it accrues in your escrow account up until the point where you have a true-up with PG&E. And then if you end up owing money, that escrow account is applied to the balance. So you would be, say you have...
Why would I owe money?
What's that?
Why?
Charge is just what it says on the bill. It's just a minimum charge. It's literally just the minimum charge that PG&E bills you on a monthly basis.
Included in the monthly payment?
Yeah, that
Yes,
$10
yeah.
you're talking about, that's just a minimum charge. It's exactly what it says it is on the bill.
Correct.
You pay monthly. It's not connected to any service.
It's a little bit confusing. Okay, I'm gonna.
It's not actually connected to any service. When you get your true-up currently, you're paying for both the delivery portion, you're being trued up for both the delivery portion of your bill, meaning transmission, distribution, a big laundry list of other charges. That's on the PG&E side of the bill. But, I mean, currently, because you're all PG&E, you're paying for both generation and delivery at true-up. That $10 does not represent any actual charges that you're accruing.
Where on my bill does it show the difference between the minimum charge and what I'm actually accruing? Is that this energy charges column there?
Absolutely. And everyone, this is Ben Choi. He's also an account manager at MCE, as well as the city councilman in Richmond. I just wanted to make sure that you all knew he wasn't an interloper jumping in. He does know what he's talking about. But yes, you're correct, sir. It's broken out in the energy charges versus the, yeah. Yeah. So are folks feeling like it's a good time to break out so that you all can come ask us questions individually? Coleman has a little bit to say about the city, but I think it's probably a good time now to break out. So maybe after Coleman gets a few minutes to chat about. Okay, one last question. Yes, sir.
Thank you. This may seem a little bit silly, but question as to why would anyone want to go 100% other than being super into the green stuff? I tend to be, but why would I do 100% as opposed to 50 or 55 or whatever that figure is?
Sure, just your preference. It's great to have it 100% renewable energy. I've been doing it for years, much longer than when I worked at MCE. Another really fun fact about that is that half of that premium, so we charge an extra penny per kilowatt hour. It's $4 to $5 per month for the average usage of a home in our area. Half of that fee goes to a local renewables fund, and so it helps us develop projects like Solar One that Alexandra was mentioning. So I'm particularly proud of that because I'm a Richmond resident, and it's a partnership with Chevron and developers and a bunch of different organizations, but it's using land that wouldn't have been used for anything else. And we managed to get some folks some jobs, local development on Chevron land. It's a win-win. But so half of that premium does go to local redevelopment or development projects like that.
And to add to that, a couple other reasons why individuals may choose to opt up. For instance, you could be a renter and maybe not have the ability to install solar on your property. Or alternatively, based on your financial situation, maybe you can't afford to install solar or another form of renewable energy. And this is a way that you can accomplish that at only a couple dollars a month rather than a more exorbitant initial upfront cost.
Thanks.
Okay, like I said, it might be kind of a silly question.
No silly questions. Okay, so let's take a few more and then maybe break out, because I have the sense that a lot of people have individual questions that can be best answered one-on-one. But yeah, I think there was a couple.
Actually, yeah, we're just gonna take a break right now. So we do have a lot of MCE members that are here this evening, as well as us from city staff that can help answer some questions on a more individual basis, especially like this gentleman's example, where looking specifically at the bill, we might be able to help answer some more questions that are, related specifically to an individual rather than the larger group.
Could we have a show of hands?
I'm sorry, I just have to ask. I'm sorry. I have a very basic question that I think does apply to most people. Because we have, basically the MC, the minimal invite rain. This is what happens. Like, my partner, he's transient, he's not good with numbers. He'll come to me with, the bill, because he's had for, a year. This is what I'd like to know. Is there some ways we could go online, and when you look at the bill, it shows, because it's long since where we would have switched over, because I understand the first few months are confusing, but this is what we don't understand. Is there some place that would show, or we could get a certain kind of bill or go online to where it shows when anyone's bill, what you are paying a month through your service now that we switched versus what it would normally be, the PG&E? Because that's where I think everyone gets confused. Like, if I had never switched over, because the weather's different, everything differs, or if we have an extra roommate, what would I be paying if I didn't have this? That's what I can't figure out. I don't know if that anyone else, but that's what I'd like to know.
Sure. Well, that's the most important thing, right? How am I going to do financially on MCE versus PG&E? We do have cost comparison tools on our website. However, solar is more complicated, so we're developing a solar-specific calculator, which we can work with you on directly if we get your bills and usage information. But we do have some cost calculators on our website, absolutely. Yeah. Can we get a show of hands, all MCE folks, so that everyone knows who they can go to?
Look to the back.
Yeah.
There's some MCE folks back there.
All right.
Okay, so before we finish with this portion, I just wanted to mention a couple things on the city's side. So we do have a solar streamlining process adopted for development permits. So you can apply online for building permits for roof-mounted solar. So I just wanted to put that information out there for anyone who may be interested in putting solar on their home. And I also wanted to mention that the council also authorized property assessed clean energy to providers to operate within the city, and that's a mechanism for financing energy efficiency projects that also include solar arrays. So if you have any more detailed questions about that, Michael and myself would be happy to answer that. Thank you.
Thanks, Coleman. All right, so thank you everybody for coming, and feel free to seek us out individually for further questions. Thanks.